We've got breaking news out of college football where Penn State has fired head coach James Franklin. That is the latest from our Matt Zenitz. The Nittany Lions are off to a 3-3 start this season after coming into the year as the second-ranked team in the country. Franklin was in the midst of his 12th season in Happy Valley, which included a trip to the college football playoff semifinals just last year. He is now owed over $49 million as part of his buyout with Penn State. The Nittany Lions are back in action on Saturday in Iowa and will play their first game without Franklin since 2013. Here to react to this news, we have Bud Elliott, Damien Harris, and John Talty joining us remotely. And John, I want to go to you first because you actually wrote the story last week after the loss at UCLA saying that Penn State should move on from James Franklin. It took them a week later than what you had originally predicted, but why do you think this is happening today?
I think it's a couple different factors. I think one, when you go all in the way that Penn State clearly did this year, following kind of that last dance, blueprint we saw with Michigan and Ohio State the prior 2 years, when it goes as bad as it has this year, that naturally, creates more pressure and more angst amongst the fan base and boosters. And I think there were quite a few people very upset about the loss to UCLA a week ago. Northwestern, to be honest, I don't even think I even considered it as a possibility that they could lose to Northwestern, which just shows how far this program has fallen in just a very short time frame. So I think those things all lead up to it. I also think we have to think about, and a week ago I thought maybe they wouldn't want to spend this much money. I heard from people around the program and around the industry that essentially told me, listen, they got a lot of money from Adidas, so that helps. They were having boosters who essentially were saying, we're not going to keep giving you money if things don't change. So that's a loss of potential money. And then also the Big Ten is on the verge of potentially, having this private equity type deal, which is going to infuse programs like Penn State with upwards of $100 million. For a program like Penn State, maybe in that $140, $150 million range. They're going to get that money, right away. So they have a lot of money coming in. I think it makes it maybe a little bit easier to swallow what is a close to $50 million buyout to make James Franklin go away.
Yeah, that is a lot of money, but in big-time college football, as John just pointed out, it's going to get even bigger. There's going to be even more money coming in. You heard him mention, too, a little bit about the why of this, right? You've got boosters saying, we're not going to give you any more money. We're already hearing commit saying, I'm not 100% on Penn State anymore. Why did this need to happen now, Bud?
I think it's because Penn State was all in this year, right? They brought everybody back. They tried to follow the Michigan plan of 2 years ago. They tried to follow the Ohio State plan of last year, where you bring a lot of these guys back who could have gone to the NFL, but they decided not to go to the NFL. They took all that extra money from Penn State. They wanted to run it back and win a title. And this year, it just didn't work with the mix. They're not as good as they were last year. They got some transfer receivers, but those guys are not good enough so far to overcome the loss of Tyler Warren. They don't look much better on offense. In fact, they look worse under the second year of Andy Kotelnicki, which I think is a bit surprising for all of us, myself included. Drew Aller does not look like he actually is playing any better. And the one thing James Franklin always did was he always won the games he was supposed to win. Some of these other games were more theoretical games that maybe you'd hoped he would win, but he always won the games he should have won until this year, right? And this team looks like they basically quit on him on UCLA and Northwestern. And I think Penn State's sending two very clear messages here. One, we think that the floor of this program is established not by you, James Franklin, but by what we are institutionally, organizationally, and financially as a program. And two, we're ready to bust that ceiling. We don't think you're the guy to do that.
I agree with everything that Bud just said. I mean, Emily, we interviewed James Franklin. What did he tell us? This was championship mentality or bust this year. Now, imagine if he told us that as media members. We know these players, these coaches, they're way more mindful of their words to the media. Imagine what James Franklin was telling his team, the pressure they were under. Imagine what James Franklin was telling the boosters. Yes, we've been knocking on the door for so long, but we went out, we got Jim Knowles, we got some guys in the transfer portal, we got a two-headed monster in the backfield. Defensively, we're going to be okay. Drew Aller is one of the more experienced quarterbacks in college football. They have absolutely nothing to show for it other than the fact that they are indeed getting worse. They have the resources. They have the talent. And when you have all of those things that Penn State has had from a booster perspective, from the people who make these decisions, you expect to see results. No matter what we can sit here and say or what we talk about, college football playoffs, national championships, Big Ten record. None of that matters. This is a production-based business, and James Franklin, quite frankly, has always under-delivered. He's always lost to the big teams, teams that had an equal level of talent, equal level of coaching. He's always lost those games. Well, he always beat up on the teams that didn't have as much talent, that didn't have the same resources, financially, coaching-wise, whatever. They're losing those games now, so they are continuing to under-deliver. If anything, to Bud's point, they're getting worse, so there is no better time. If there was a better time, it would have been after the UCLA game, to be quite honest, so they wouldn't have suffered another embarrassing loss. But they stuck with James Franklin. They notched another loss to Northwestern, which they shouldn't have done. So there isn't a more evident time than now to get rid of James Franklin.
Something he also told us in our Week 1 college football pregame show was this was the best personnel that he has had around him, both between players and with coaches. You bring in a Jim Knowles, make him the highest paid coordinator in the offseason. He felt the best about this group coming in his 12 seasons at Penn State. Meanwhile, assistant head coach and cornerbacks coach Terry Smith will serve as the interim head coach. And John, I want to go back out to you because this is what happens in the interim, literally. But what about big picture? Where does Penn State go from here?
Do you mean like coaching candidates?
Yeah.
To me, there's one name that this search starts with, and that's Matt Rule at Nebraska. I've already talked to multiple people who expect that there's a very good possibility that Matt Rule will be the next head coach at Penn State. He's, of course, a Penn State alum. I've also been told by multiple people that he has a close relationship with athletic director Pat Kraft. So there are people who think that it's early, so I want to be careful in how I say this, but there are people in the industry who believe that this will not be much of a search, that this is going to begin and end with Matt Rule. I know that this is a job that he has had his eye on, I think, for a while. Again, there's a strong affinity, having played there, having a strong belief in what Penn State can be. There could be some interesting pushback in terms of he hasn't exactly crushed it in Nebraska so far, but that's the name that I've heard a lot about. I'm sure there are others who will get in or want to be in the mix because I do think it's a very strong job, but that is where, as of October 12th, that is where I would put my eye on right now.
Think about Matt Rule.
I think that's an absolute no-brainer. I mean, when you talk about an alum, not only is I'm blanking on his name, Matt Rule. Not only is he a Penn State alum, but when you look at what he's done at all the programs that he's been in college, we won't look at his time in Carolina, he is almost a savior, if you will, for programs. He wins, he has success everywhere that he goes, and he does it in a meticulous and methodical way. Year one, he goes in, he implements his structure, his plan, his foundation. By year two, he expects his players to be the governing body in the locker room. He wants a player-led team. That's what Penn State needs. They depended way too much on the leadership of James Franklin, and look at where it's gotten them. Look at Drew Aller. We've always talked about Drew Aller's not getting better, he's getting worse. I've said this plenty of times. He is the playing on the field. What you see from Drew Aller is what James Franklin is as a coach. He plays at the level that James Franklin coaches at, and that's not the operation for Matt Rule. He wants a player-led team, a team that's full of accountability from the players. We talked to him when we were in Nebraska. He doesn't want to have to go and tell guys, hey, you guys need to go lift. Hey, you guys need to play this coverage right. Hey, you guys need to get a hat on a hat in the run game. He wants the players to hold that type of accountability, and he's doing that at a place with much less, which is Nebraska. Now you implement him at Penn State with the resources that they have, the coordinators that they have, financially, the way that they're set up, and the recruits that they're able to bring in for somebody like Matt Rule. This is a no-brainer, and I definitely think he can get them over the hump.
I would push back a little bit. I think Matt Rule is a good candidate. Obviously, the fit, the knowledge he has of the program, the fact that he has all the connections there to the program. But look, he's also turned over that recruiting staff several times there. They haven't got that right. I think he made a really bad hire and hired his buddy, an offensive coordinator, a couple of years ago and stuck with him for way too long. Now he finally remedied that. They brought in a guy who actually has a history of success coaching offense, which is a novel concept. But I don't know that they're building to anything at Nebraska. They're very close to being 3 losses right now. If Cincinnati doesn't throw that egregious interception there at the end, just kind of a YOLO ball, they probably lose to Cincy, right? They needed a pretty nice comeback yesterday to beat Maryland, a team that is probably not going to go to a bowl game. So watching this, I think he's a good fit. I don't know that he's guaranteed to do better than James Franklin. Honestly, Franklin had a hell of a track record at Penn State, and there's nothing about Rule that really screams to me, yeah, that's the guy to bust the ceiling that Penn State thinks they can bust through. Now, he certainly could do it. I think it's actually, he's on my list. I had 3 guys here. He's certainly high on the list, but I don't think it's a slam dunk, like no doubt. Oh yeah, that's the guy you go get. I mean, I think it's a guy you go get because of fit, and because of knowledge and familiarity. But I don't know that he's like some guaranteed to go crush it at Penn State more than James did.
Who else is on your list then?
Kirk Cignetti.
Okay.
A guy that really has a history of overachieving. I mean, obviously, like what he's doing in Indiana right now is incredible. And then I think Eli Drinkwitz as well. A guy, if you're Penn State, you want offense. Matt Rule does not bring offense. He does not have a history of scoring points. What have you criticized James Franklin for the last couple years? Offense, right? Like Rule finally hired a decent offensive coordinator for like the first time in his life. Are we sure he's going to score points in Penn State? They're tired of scoring in the 20s and low 30s. They want to score 40 points. They want a guy who can score points. Drinkwitz has done a hell of a job building Missouri. He recruits his butt off, and he scores a lot of points. I would have him slightly higher on the list than Rule, but the familiarity certainly is kind of in Rule's favor there.
Yeah, and John, something else that you wrote that I thought was interesting in your piece from last week after that UCLA loss was that it was going to be in the best interest for both parties to have this breakup. So we talked about the Penn State side of things in terms of where they go from here. How about for James Franklin? This is a coach that was coaching in the college football playoff, has won 10 games for multiple seasons, and has a great track record, and will probably want it at some of the jobs that are already available. Some more could become available. So what do you think is next for James Franklin?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that if he didn't get fired, if his ego allowed it, that a Virginia Tech could be a great fit for James Franklin, because they've struggled. They need to just raise the bar. They need to raise the floor. And I think before this year and how things just clearly went off the rails and the losses to UCLA, Northwestern, you could generally expect him to raise the bar. So I think a school like Virginia Tech could make sense. On our College Football Insiders podcast earlier today, Brandon Marcello was talking about how Arkansas would like to go big game hunting, and that they might try to swing some names. Like, does James Franklin feel like a fit at Arkansas? To me, not quite, but maybe that's a job in which he could jump into. So I think that the question for him is going to be, do I want to take time off? Do I want to try to evaluate what went wrong this year? I'm getting paid regardless, and wait another year. The flip side of that is that we're expecting this to be, and it already is, one of the most active coaching carousel cycles in a while. We're expecting more Power 4 jobs to open up. So it could be an opportunity for him to slide right into another job if there is a AD out there who believes that the mostly good that you get with James Franklin outweighs the fact that the ceiling is going to be a little bit lower, and he's also going to be jumping most likely to a program that has less resources than Penn State. I think you're hoping that, hey, we saw what he did at Vandy, we saw what he could do at Penn State. This guy can get us 8-9 wins, and maybe that's enough for us, rather than believing that we're going to be competing for national championships.
Can I piggyback off of him for 1 second? The second half of what you said, John, James Franklin needs to take some time and sit and just think about what's gone on the past couple of years. That is the best route for James Franklin. Not just because of the wins and the losses, not just because of underachieving with the resources that James Franklin has had. He has been booed out of a stadium, his own stadium, in Happy Valley, in front of his family. Emily, you even mentioned to me how he had to be surrounded last night as he was walking out of the stadium with his daughter, with his family. Like, we often get so caught up in, okay, yes, you're a head coach, so you got to do your job. We expect this, we expect that. This is a man that has a family. He cares about just living life and being happy and being in a space of peace. I think James Franklin needs some peace right now. I think he needs to take this $50 million that he's going to get to do absolutely nothing, go sit and spend some time with your family. Get away from the toxicity of what sports brings sometimes, because we know it can hamper you, it can weigh on you, and it can start to affect different avenues of your life that don't necessarily pertain to football. So I think James Franklin is a wonderful guy. I've sat up here and criticized him a lot for what goes on the football field, but from a person-to-person standpoint, take this big bag that you just got, go do nothing with it, go enjoy some time with your family, get your spirits back up, and then again, go find you a place that it might not be Penn State, you might not have the resources, but at least you love what you do again. It doesn't look like when James Franklin is out there, he's enjoying his time out there. Now, how can you when you lose to UCLA, when you lose to Northwestern, when you can never beat Ohio State or Michigan? It's impossible for you to be happy when you're knocking on the door of national championships every year and you never get one. Take some time. Don't be so eager to rush back into another situation where you carry your old baggage into your new job and then you get yourself run out of another place. Take this nice, cool $50 million bag you just got, James Franklin. Enjoy yourself, enjoy some family time, and then if you want to get back into it, there will be opportunities for him.
I don't totally disagree. Might be a great option for him. However, if you're getting $50 million with no offset, you can afford to take a little bit less if you get a prime job, if that job comes with certain guarantees of spending. Like if I'm James Franklin, there's no way in hell I'm taking Arkansas given what they spend on football right now. Like their football money, they could talk about theoretical football money and maybe they're willing to spend it. Maybe they didn't want to spend it for Sam Pittman, but they didn't spend it for Sam Pittman. So like if I'm James Franklin, maybe I take a little bit less salary, but I'm like, hey, I want 16 rev share and I want 12 NIL on top of that pledged, right? Like that needs to be there so I can compete. Because you can't win at Arkansas right now given how they actually spend for Sam Pittman. It's just like the money ain't mathing, right? So if you look at that, there are some jobs which maybe could come open that maybe he'd be a really good fit at. You know, proven track record as a winner at a major level. I think he would attract good coaches. Guys generally do like working for James Franklin. They don't typically like bolt for lesser jobs out of that program. Vatek's an interesting fit just simply because Brent Pry was Franklin's DC. So like, are you bringing sort of that like Penn State flavor to Virginia Tech when that's failed so miserably there? But other than that, like it clearly like in the area, you know, he's recruited the area when he was the offensive coordinator at Maryland under Ralph Friedgen prior to taking the Penn State job. So I think that makes some sense. But yeah, I mean, taking a year off is not a bad idea either.
No, certainly he will have his options available for him as these jobs continue to open. And I know that they will be talking about this on the College Football Insiders podcast. I'm sure they were already talking about it leading up to this happening. Join John Talty and the whole crew as they tell you what's really happening behind the scenes of your favorite sport of college football. You can watch by scanning the QR code or listen wherever you get your podcasts.